we don't have any evidence at all of any accident. We don't have any evidence of you having a difficulty getting around as a result of an accident. We actually have more evidence to the contrary that you've had no problem traveling at all to get to and from work, and you've had no problem traveling at all to the tune that you got a sponsored trip to China and you had no problem doing that.
By now, everyone knows that Liberal MP Shaun Chen tendered his resignation of his seat in Parliament. We covered that video a few days ago, and it sparked a lot of questions from Canadians. 2 of those questions have now gone viral, so we decided to look into them.
Let's take a look. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the resignation message that Shaun Chen had posted. We're not going to read all of it, but we want to reread the second paragraph.
In late fall 2025, I suffered a serious motor vehicle accident while commuting to Ottawa, which has caused significant health issues that now prevent me from traveling there as frequently as the role requires. After discussing the situation with my family, I have decided that it is best for me to step down as a member of Parliament.
We don't have to go back to our other video, but I'll mention some things that that we talked about in there. One of which is that the media is accepting this at face value and didn't ask any further questions. Contrast that to Larry Brock and the Conservative Party. That was another video on a previous day. If you're interested in that, take a look at our coverage of that, and we talk about the bias between the 2 different stories. But because the media didn't ask questions and dive further into what Shaun Chen's announcement actually means, independent media did, and it sparked some questions. The main 2 questions that are going around right now, number 1 is, well, if there is such an accident and you were so injured and you're not able to travel from Scarborough to Ottawa, how does it make sense that you were easily able to travel from Scarborough to China in that same period? So that's the first question. The second question we're going to get into after that is, based on some of the pictures and posts that have been uncovered on this, people are now asking questions of, did you actually violate parliamentary rules? And did you vote outside of Canada when you weren't allowed to? So let's get into the first claim. So credit to Andy Lee. She does a lot of investigatory work when it comes to China and foreign interference. So Andy Lee posted this specifically on August the 11th. It says, there are posts on WeChat showing Liberal Shaun Chen in Guangdong, shared just 2 weeks ago. He said he retired because he couldn't travel to Ottawa for work. The posts say he is part of an official business delegation. What is going on? We didn't have a delegation in China, did we? So this is another picture that Andy Lee had posted showing, or allegedly showing, Shaun Chen as part of this delegation in China during this period. Here's another picture of him allegedly in China, and it's posted by the social media account, and this is on WeChat. This has all been translated from Chinese into English, and you can see a lot of what it's saying there. And here's another post that that Andy Lee had shared from the WeChat, and again, this has been translated into English just so everybody can see. Posting dates don't necessarily indicate when he was actually there, but it's interesting that all of these were posted in the March 2026 timeframe. So here's a picture of Shaun Chen, and he's in China, and some folks have found a video of this, and they were saying that this was actually posted on March 25th. Now, the interesting thing about this is, although, again, Shaun Chen said that he couldn't travel to Ottawa anymore because of the car accident, and that prohibits him from doing so because he was so hurt, this video is actually interesting, and we found the actual source of the video. This is what it says.
今日咧特別榮幸有請到我哋加拿大國會議員，我哋陳勝仁哥哥進到我哋嘅家鄉全球故事咯，嚇，係啊，也特別歡迎你。然後呢，你看到你去多倫多過來係咩？
對，係我喺多倫多過來，真係安然過來。
So that's interesting.
That it's Difficult to sit in a car for, let's say, 5 hours from Toronto to Ottawa, but it is easy to sit on a plane for 16 plus hours to China.
And traveling with luggage, moving that luggage around. You're not traveling directly from Toronto to China. You're doing some layovers, you're doing some transfers, so you're walking around airports. And I didn't see any brace there. I didn't see any sort of assistance when it comes to mobility or anything like that. And he also says, you know, I've come really far to get here. He actually brags about that. So again, this was another good find by Andy Lee out there. This is a great question, and it deserves some investigation and some follow-up questions. So what do we know? Well, we know from Shaun Chen's own post that he said that he suffered this horrific accident in the late fall of 2025. He also said that it was during a commute to Ottawa. So if he's commuting to Ottawa, it's easily able to be an assumption that he was traveling to Ottawa for parliamentary business, meaning going to the House and going there for committee, going there to vote. Fine. The problem is that there are no news reports of there being an accident involving Shaun Chen. There are no Facebook posts from Shaun Chen talking about the fact that he was in an accident. There's no "get well, Shaun." There's no "we have our prayers out for you." There's nothing like that. There is nothing in mainstream or even on social media that we've been able to find, and we've been looking for about 4 or 5 hours today to be able to corroborate that there actually was an accident, let alone one that's going to leave him physically harmed to the point where it led him to resign his seat.
Now, to be fair, the absence of evidence is not in and of itself evidence. It's entirely possible that a car crash did occur and Shaun Chen was very, very hurt, but we're not finding it.
And we have some evidence to call into question whether or not he was significantly hurt or not. So Shaun mentioned he was injured in late fall. So we said, okay, well, November is pretty, well, mid-fall, so that doesn't really count. So we're going to start in December. Well, this is December 3rd, 2025. This is Shaun at committee. He's at the Standing Committee for Status of Women. Here is him in the same committee on December 8th. Now, that was the last meeting that he attended for the Standing Committee on Status of Women. This is the last time that we actually show Shaun Chen present at committee for 2025, because December 8th is the week that Parliament actually rises for the winter. And once they rise from the winter, everyone goes back to their ridings, and you don't hear about this until the next year, which we'll get into shortly. But he said he was commuting to Ottawa, so it must have happened before this. And we don't see any abrasions, any visible signs that he's in distress at committee. We just see him showing up for work at committee. So he's either the most committed parliamentary employee that we've ever seen, or he wasn't hurt that badly, or did the accident even occur in the first place? Let's continue. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Shaun at an event on December 15th, 2025. So again, if you're recuperating from a very serious injury from a serious car accident, in his own words, are you going to be walking around and visiting businesses, or are you going to be taking a little bit of time off to recuperate or seek medical care? That's my question. This is now allegedly in the recuperation phase of his serious accident. Here he is. He's at work on the first available meeting for the Status of Women Committee on February 3rd. This is Shaun on February 5th, February 10th, February 12th. Shaun's a very committed MP for being seriously hurt and comes into work for the first couple of weeks of February after he suffers this very serious accident. What happens after this? After this, he takes his trip to China. After he comes back from China, you guessed it, he's back at work in person. This is him on April 16th, which is the first available meeting when he comes back. April 21st, and this is him on April 28th. So what are we driving at here? Well, here's the thing. MPs are available to attend committee remotely. And if you're seriously hurt, I would expect you to be attending remotely. Why are you not attending remotely, at least in the initial stages of your recovery, if you were so hurt in an accident? An accident that left you injured to the point that you resigned, where you are having difficulty traveling. This is where it doesn't make sense. And this is where I think this is a very good question for folks out there like Andy Lee to be asking. Because we have seen no evidence that an accident actually occurred. We have seen no evidence that he attended remotely to kind of be accommodating for that accident. And he showed up for work, no problem, to commit to his parliamentary duties. This is where the problem lies for this accident excuse. Now, we're going to move on to this second question now. And the second question is did he violate any sort of parliamentary procedure in voting remotely? Well, we need to ask some questions before that. What do you mean voting remotely? Was he in the House? Was he not? Well, there's some posts on social media that actually talk about where he was and when he was in China. So this is the first one. So this shows him in presumably an ice cream parlor or a yogurt shack somewhere in China. And this is posted on March 25th. It says Canadian Hakka community leaders visited the Haiku Integrated Media Center and the office of the organizing committee of the 34th World Hakka Conference. And it goes on to talk about this. So now we're coming back to this photo because, again, this was a video that was initially stated to be posted on the 25th. Well, what also happened on the 25th? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there was a vote, and the vote was actually on C9. And you can see here that Shaun Chen actually voted remotely. This is what this means. This is the screen that comes up at the end of a parliamentary vote after everybody stands up, and it shows them voting. So you can see that he voted nay on this. In terms of the amendments that were coming forth for C9, and this wasn't the only vote that he actually took part in that day. He took part in multiple votes, and they were all remote. And just to make sure we're telling the truth, we're actually showing you this is on the Government of Canada's ParlView website, so you can see the date. It was March 25th, and you can see the time index at the bottom. So this was almost at 7 o'clock in the evening Eastern time when this vote was actually taken. So he was voting remotely specifically at this time. Why is this important? Because there's voting rules in the standing orders around when you can vote, where you can vote, and how you can vote.
There sure are. Check this out. So this is my 4th edition of the Green Book, and I've already bookmarked the spot that we're going to go to. If you are following along at home, it is on page 1189. And it is regarding Standing Order 45, voting. So 45.1 says when vote recorded. When a question is put on a motion, any member participating in person may ask that the motion be carried or carried on division. Any member of a recognized party participating in person may ask that the yeas and nays be entered in the journals. A request for a recorded division shall take precedence over a request for adoption.
So if a recorded vote is actually taken, whether on a motion or an actual bill or an amendment, then there are certain restrictions. One of them being
Number 12, recorded divisions in person and by electronic means. Exception, secret ballot. They believe they only do the secret ballot for when they are voting for the speaker, but don't quote me 100% on that one. Recorded divisions shall take place in the usual way for members participating in person or by electronic means, provided that A. Electronic votes shall be cast from within Canada and a confirmation of a member's visual identity be required.
So what does that mean? What that means is during the pandemic, nobody could actually go into the House to vote, but they still needed to actually carry out parliamentary business. So what they did is they set up a voting system where you would be ID'd as who you are, and you would be able to actually vote remotely. The limitation is that you're only allowed to vote while in Canada. So you can't be voting from another nation. Why is that? Well, that's to ensure that you're not going to be influenced by another foreign entity. And it's also to ensure that you're maintaining your parliamentary privilege and that you are voting, in fact, in your interest, in the interest of the constituents, in the interest of your party, and you're not being unduly influenced.
It's also to prevent any potential, I don't know what you would want to call them, security issues, like technological security issues, so that, for example, if you're in China and you're voting remotely, that's not going to transmit your information to places that it should not be transmitted.
So you can understand why there's some concern and why there are some questions on this, because if there are photos and evidence showing that Mr. Chen could have been in China on the 25th of March and also voting, then that calls into serious questions of A, did he actually violate the standing orders? And B, did a foreign government have potential access to view or monitor the voting app that he was actually using to cast his vote in Canada? These are serious questions. So a lot of people are leaning towards yes. And we were actually going down this path, and we were initially thinking that this is actually a good possibility. He may have actually voted from China on the 25th, and this would be a very, very serious breach of parliamentary privilege.
Right. It's not illegal in the Canada Criminal Code sense, but it would be a breach of privilege. The other thing is that when politicians and often journalists go to China, the Canadian government tells them to leave their cell phones at home.
Right. And that's because China is monitoring all of your phones and all of the traffic that comes out of your phones. There's no guarantee that the traffic coming out of your phone is not going to be intercepted by the state of China, and you don't want to have any of that data falling into the hands of the state. That's a big concern over in China. Now, where does this take us? It takes us here. We have to look at the business calendar on the Parliamentary website. So anyone can see this, and it's on the front page of ourcommons.ca, and you just have to scroll down a bit to see it. So what we're looking at is March 2026 and the calendar. Now the shaded areas in green, so the second week of March, 9th to the 13th, and the third week of March, the 23rd to the 26th, or rather the 4th rather, they are the days that the House actually sat. So that's when politicians are in Ottawa, they're in committee, and they're in the House actually casting votes and in question period and so forth. So we have to look at the timing here. If Mr. Chen was in China on the 23rd, 24th, or 25th, and he was casting votes from China on those days, he'd be in violation of that rule. The trouble is we're starting to find new evidence. So that original video that we showed that people were saying was posted on the 25th, could have been posted on the 25th by another account, but we actually find the same video posted on March 21st. So again, let's go back to the parliamentary calendar. So you can see that that's on Saturday, the 21st. That's on constituency week. That is not during the parliamentary sitting. What we can reasonably say is that that video was not recorded, and therefore you can't say with any definitive authority that Mr. Chen was in China as a result of that video being posted on the 25th.
Well, and we do this all the time being on social media, as we will record things ahead of time and then post them a couple of days later or a week later. Sometimes we're even using things that we've posted months ago.
Politicians do this a lot. So
Yep.
if they're going to go on vacation for a week or two, what they'll do is they'll record a bunch of videos, especially if it's heading into the holiday season. So, you know, it may be early December, but if they're going to be gone on Christmas, they'll record their Christmas greetings, their New Year's greetings, and all of this. That way it's all done. It's all ready to go. And then they can relax and have some time with their family or go to some of the constituency events while these messages are being posted on social media. So we can't go by the posted date as any sort of evidence of when he was or was not in China. But we found something else. This. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is this? Well, this is a public statement of disclosure, and this is by Mr. Chen. Why are we looking at this? Well, so what this says is that Mr. Chen actually had a trip to China, which we now know, and this is now confirmed specifically from this document, and it was sponsored. So he disclosed that someone paid for his trip to China, and that is why he had to make this declaration to the ethics commissioner. When did he disclose this? On April 16th, 2026. And you can look down at the bottom. So it's for the Hakka Canadian Association. So this actually corroborates some of the media that was actually posted and that we showed earlier. And the purpose is to support Canadian delegation participation in the 34th World Hakka Conference. So we didn't have an official government delegation. It was a community delegation that was sponsoring his trip there. And the dates he was there was from March 14th, 2026 to March 22nd, 2026. So he left on the 14th and he arrived on the 22nd. And the sponsorship that he was given is transportation to the tune of $3,320 and accommodation of around $1,000 and meals around $455. What does this mean? This means that as of April 16th, he disclosed to the ethics commissioner that he was gone in China from the 14th to the 22nd
Of March.
of March. Some of the media that we found, even though some accounts have posted it after the fact or during the week of the 25th, we're finding that those other post dates are actually earlier the previous week.
Right. So you cannot say that Chen was in China on the 25th based on that post that we showed, because the exact same video was posted earlier on the 21st. Now, it's possible he was still there, but according to the documentation we found from the ethics commissioner, it says he was only there until the 22nd.
Right. Now, you may ask, well, why would he be remote the week of the 25th? Well, if I'm coming back from China, I'm going to be pretty jet lagged and I'm going to be pretty tired, and I'm not really going to be interested in going to Ottawa. As soon as I get back, I'm going to probably want to work from home, hopefully. But, you know, it is what it is. So, as always, we go where the evidence goes, and we go where the evidence leads us. And with this disclosure, we can't say that, you know, well, he kind of panicked when the story came out, people started seeing things, and then he went and disclosed this. No, this was disclosed in April, shortly after he actually returned from his trip. So what the evidence shows us is that he took a trip to China. He was on video in China. He was walking around like there was no problem in China, but he wasn't necessarily in China while the vote was taken. So we can't say that he actually broke parliamentary rules.
Well, and the interesting thing about this particular case, and we've been working on this, I think since yesterday, but we did the bulk of the work today, is that we had a certain idea in mind that we were going on a certain path. And as we found this evidence and it started coming up, we said, we've got it all wrong. We actually have to go to this path. And again, here at Northern Perspective, we are focused on the truth and not partisan politics.
And this is why we have to be very, very careful with what we source on social media. It's why we try almost never to actually get sources from social media. But in stories like this, it's almost unavoidable. Post date doesn't necessarily reflect record date. And this is what we have to be very careful of here at Northern Perspective, and we try to be. As Tony said, we thought this is clear. We thought he was going to get busted for violating parliamentary rules, but we actually haven't found any conclusive evidence to actually support that, and we're finding more evidence that he actually didn't violate parliamentary rules. But this brings us back to question number one, folks. Question number one is still outstanding. And question number one is, why did you resign? Because we don't have any evidence at all of any accident. We don't have any evidence of you having a difficulty getting around as a result of an accident. We actually have more evidence to the contrary, that you've had no problem traveling at all to get to and from work, and you've had no problem traveling at all to the tune that you got a sponsored trip to China and you had no problem doing that. Moving around, going to different events.
Sitting on a plane for that length of time?
Sitting on a plane, no knee brace, no nothing. Yet you want Canadians to believe that you're having trouble getting around, so therefore you're going to be resigning your seat in Parliament. So that's a question that the mainstream media should be digging into. Because if there's anybody you would think that would have the resources to actually get to the bottom of that question and whether there was a car accident or not, that would be the mainstream media. But it doesn't seem like they have any interest in answering that question at all.